Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Good Thursday evening, everyone. Rory Johnston with you live here in the News Channel 5 Plus studios on this Thursday evening, March 19th. What a few weeks it has been, starting with the tornadoes and now, of course, COVID-19. Want to update you real quick before we get to our guest. At last check, the numbers jumping as expected here in Tennessee. 156, I believe, as we speak, confirmed cases of COVID. The majority right here in Davidson County, and then next is Williamson County. Of course, we have a full list, all the information you need on COVID-19, the coronavirus, on NewsChannel5.com. The governor, Bill Lee, this morning at his annual, this afternoon, I should say, at his annual, daily news briefing, said he believes Tennesseans are responding very well and doing what they need to do, and that is stay at home if you don't need to go out, wash your hands, limit contact, look out for the elderly, all the things we know. Let's keep doing that and continue on. Now, we want to welcome our guest, Chris Sanders, familiar face here, Executive Director of the Tennessee Equality Project. We did the elbow
That's
bump,
right.
Social distancing a little bit here. Chris, we want to talk a little bit about the legislature. A note to say that the governor, we know, this coronavirus has changed everything,
Sure.
and they're now trying to rush through an amended budget. It's going to be painful for some groups, but we have to respond to this emergency. So we know that is happening because the legislature, and right now, from what I heard, there's bipartisan support so far for this spending plan. They need to pass this, and then they're going to take a recess, right?
That's right. A little bit about that. They are now really trying to respond to the COVID-19 crisis that is enveloping the state and in our nation, to the point that there are members of the legislature who are in the upper deck watching the proceedings and participating that way, in many cases doing their own forms of social distancing. The public is not allowed in the Capitol or in the Cordell Hull building, where committee hearings take place and legislative offices are located. That has raised a lot of concerns, because if the public is not able to weigh in every way possible, then should the legislature proceed with its business?
Right.
So the compromise is that the legislature, I think, will, there is live streaming, of course, of all their proceedings, but they are doing an abridged agenda. They're focusing on the budget, as you noted, and a few other bills. The anti-LGBTQ bills that we're going to talk about tonight are not among those that they are focusing on this week, for which we are quite grateful. And we hope they don't come back to them when they come back in session, but we're not holding our breath on that.
Right.
But that's kind of a bit of the context for what's going on this week. They hope to get out this week. As we speak, the House is going into its floor session. The Senate will go into its floor session at 8 o'clock. I don't know whether they'll finish up tonight, but we'll see.
Let's talk a little bit about those bills, and it does point out in the larger perspective. I know this is an important time of year for you and your group as you work to lobby these lawmakers. There are many other groups lobbying lawmakers, and they have specific bills that they're tracking, and now of course the coronavirus has just kind of changed everything, and when are the bills going to be taken up, and let's not lose sight, and we don't want anything happening behind closed doors, like you said.
That's right.
Using the guise of, the social distancing, and we were just, we still want as transparent and open a government as possible.
That's
but we've just never been through anything like this before, so this is kind of new territory as these bills progress.
It is, and it is good to see the legislature not taking up every single thing and going on as business, as if it were business
They're
as
prioritizing.
usual. Idaho, on the other hand, is going on as if it were business as usual, and they have passed this week 2 anti-transgender bills that are going to the governor's desk. So that's a study in contrast. At least we have not done what Idaho is doing.
All right, let's talk a little bit about these bills. And I'll just start, and again, I'm going to get to you for reference. Senate Bill 1736, House Bill 1689. This is in committee. right?
Which 1736.
And this would exclude transgender students
Yep.
from school sports.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about where this bill even originated.
This is a bill that we've seen in some other states. Idaho, for example, has this bill, and some other states have looked at this bill. Texas has a policy, but I think not a state law on this. This originates from some fear-mongering that suddenly transgender athletes are going to displace other athletes for spots on teams or scholarships or things like that. That's where this is, that's the rhetoric that's used. Where it's coming from is, geesh, we couldn't pass those bathroom bills in the state legislatures, so we're moving on to this. So that's. So
they're saying, let's say a young man who is transitioning male to female may have an advantage physically and athletically.
That is an argument that they are making.
That's what they're making, right?
Yeah. What we would say is, trans kids come in every size and every strength ability. And there is a case in Connecticut, actually, where some young women are suing trans athletes, but they've actually recently beaten those trans athletes in races.
Right.
So, this idea of some competitive advantage is not clear-cut. And I'm not aware of conclusive studies on this issue. But as I say, trans kids come in every strength, ability, and every size.
What kind of a burden would this be for the schools themselves?
That's one of the issues that we're really looking at, because proof of gender would be established by one's original birth certificate.
According to the bill.
Yes. Yeah. The schools would have to develop, we think, a new way of keeping the records and using the records and making sure they had the most accurate records. The issue comes when students move from out of state.
Right.
Every state handles its birth certificates differently. Vital records is a state function. It's not a federal function. So you can amend a birth certificate in some states. And then it becomes a matter of schools trying to sort out, what are the rules in every state and how do we apply it here? And who gets to decide when to accuse a student and all of those sorts of things. So, and could those records be misused? Could they be used for other things other than just establishing eligibility for sports? What if a faculty member leaks the information to someone else?
Right.
So we think it presents all kinds of headaches for school systems to get into this.
I'm reading here an example. Texas has tried this policy, it says, with failing results. The example of transgender wrestler Mac Beggs.
Yep.
Tell me about what happened in this case.
Mac is a transgender man who, when he was a high school student, won 2 back-to-back state wrestling championships in the girls division because his birth certificate says female. This was highly annoying to the young women who were wrestling. This is actually what took opportunities, scholarship opportunities, away from them and championship titles away from them. The fact that Mac, who wanted to wrestle the boys, was not allowed to, was forced to wrestle the girls. So, the irony of this is...
So it kind of had the reverse effect.
It had absolutely the reverse effect. Because Mac was more than happy to wrestle the
So
boys.
you're talking about Mac was born female.
He was assigned female at birth, yes.
Assigned female. Thank you for the proper
Yep, that's
verbiage.
what was on his birth certificate.
Right. And still, because that was on his birth certificate, and who knows what physically, hormones,
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, now forced to wrestle with the female, even though he wanted to wrestle as a male, and wow.
So yeah, that means the girls were not able to be the state championship that year.
How far along are these? It says in committee.
They're in committee. Presumably, when we come back, it will be up in a Senate committee, and it will be up in the full House Education Committee.
Do you get a chance? I just want to back up a little bit and talk about your process up on the Hill, talking to lawmakers. Is it just you? Do you have, how many folks do you have with the Tennessee Equality Project? Do they know, do they turn and run the more conservative lawmakers, or do they actually make time to sit and listen to you even though they may have already made up their mind? Tell me about that process.
Right, we have a lobbyist, like a lot of groups up there, with whom we contract, and she does a very good job and has good relationships with members of both parties. And we have a lot of volunteers that we call district captains, and they are in a particular Senate or House district around the state. They either are coming to visit during our days on the Hill, which, because of tornadoes and because of COVID-19, two of them got canceled this year. But they tried to develop a relationship. We turned a few of those into phone meetings in the wake of the emerging crisis, health crisis. So it's not just me. Our lobbyist does an incredible job. What I do is organize the various forms of grassroots support for people to speak out against these bills. We've got an incredible group of mothers in Clarksville, for example, who are mothers of trans kids, who really, I think, are quite persuasive. They've had an op-ed in the Leaf Chronicle, and they've been to our days on the Hill and been speaking with lawmakers. So it's more than just Nashville, and it has to be. We elect legislators from around the state, and we've got great volunteers from around the state.
All right, 737+ if you would like to chime in, give you a little bit of break from coronavirus coverage tonight to talk about some issues happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to take our first break, and we'll welcome your phone calls. Be right back.